Ancient pre-agricultural humans did not have access to large amounts of saturated fat. Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I thought I would chat with you guys and gals a little bit about this today. Quick reminder though, if you guys will please click like on my video, I would be grateful. If you will please follow me or subscribe if you aren't yet, depending on what platform this is on, I would appreciate that. And if you guys would drop me a comment with your thoughts, please feel free to do so. So with some of this, I see these arguments a lot, and really it's an appeal to nature. And I want to be clear, like it doesn't matter if it's even true or not biologically, because that's not how we measure stuff in the human body. So it doesn't matter, but the fact of the matter is, has been brought up, people love to say that our ancestors going back tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of years ago, ate enormous amounts of saturated fat, like all over the world. And there's some major problems with this idea. Okay. And people like to make references over to Inuits and other stuff. Again, tiny percentage of the population. They're talking about Eskimos, basically. Say, well, they eat this or that. Completely irrelevant. That has nothing to do with the history of humanity. So, and also they want to bring up other species. Let's set aside other species. We are talking about Homo sapiens, right? Who have been here just a little over 200,000 years. We're not talking about other species going back millions of years. Let's focus upon Homo sapien, us, our species. All right, they love to pretend that we ate tons and tons and tons of meat and that we lived on nothing but red meat and large amounts of fat and everything else. But here's the problem with that. Look at the different climates that we lived in through most of time. Okay, yes, we spread out over time, and yes, we did get to colder regions, but even if you look at the glacial periods, we kind of got pushed back out of those colder regions. We died out. Okay, so we tended to stick to the slightly warmer regions, the majority of our population, until, again, it warmed up enough that we could push up into Europe and further north and into the Americas and everything else. So again, you have to understand that context and look at the food there. And the thing I would ask people is, where were they getting all this fat? Like, well, from meat. Okay, you're buying store-bought, pasture-raised and grain-finished meat. Wild animals don't have all that fat. Okay, look at the nutrition profile on wild game. Any of you hunters, I grew up hunting. Okay, look at venison, look at antelope, look at elk. So these big animals, right, that we think of with all this red meat, they're extremely lean. They are extremely lean. They are way under 10% fat. Some of them are like 5% body fat. They're pretty dang shredded, actually. They're pretty lean. They're like bodybuilders, kind of. So they don't have a lot of fat on them. They don't have a lot of fat on them. So then you start looking at it and you go, well, wait a minute. So if you're talking most wild game, if you ate 3 pounds of it every day, you would get less saturated fat than is in like half of a hamburger today. I'm talking pounds, 3 pounds. And any of you ever hunted wild game? Not that much meat on a deer. On a whitetail deer or something? Yeah. So unless you're taking down big game, you're not getting as much meat as you think. And so people love to point that out. They're like, well, what about the big game? Well, this is not what humans were eating for the most part. Yes, there are certain tribes in certain areas that sustain themselves on buffalo in North America. There were people who did hunt woolly mammoths. But even the archaeologists point out with the mammoths, they don't have actual definitive evidence that any group sustained themselves on them, right? They know that they hunted them in groups. They can find the evidence of it. The Neanderthal and Homo sapien both did. Like, this is understood, but they'll say, we don't really know how common it was. Like, we don't know if it was a regular thing or if there were tribes that maybe special events organized something once a year, twice a year, a seasonal thing, to take a big group to go try to hunt one down and then bring it back and eat it. So even then, that would probably be about the only real source of saturated fat. 95% of our species going back tens of thousands of years even had access to. Okay, there's just not that much. Most fish doesn't have it. Most wild game doesn't. So the woolly mammoth would be about the only option they have. Okay, like even they're thinking, what about hippos and stuff? They're actually really lean. Hippos are really lean. Just because they're round doesn't mean they're fat. They're 95% muscle. So you're talking about trying to hunt woolly mammoths, which was dangerous. It was problematic, required large organizations of groups. We know based on the records we found that it also usually resulted in serious injuries. Like it was probably not, this is what the leading experts say, it probably was not like a super routine common thing. We just don't know how common it was because of the organization and resources involved. So they didn't have access to this. And so people have this delusion, this caveman diet or certain things with paleo or this carnivore thing, that your ancestors had access to all this meat. They didn't. They lived on whatever they could find. Tubers, root vegetables up through most of history were enormous. Whatever berries, fruit they could forage, root vegetables, bugs, grub worms, like bugs were an enormous part of your ancestors' history. No, I'm not telling you to eat bugs. Like, I don't want to eat bugs either. But I'm just telling you that is what they ate. That was an enormous source of protein. They weren't chowing down on 3 pounds of steak a day. Nobody had access to that. They just didn't. Even the hunters, even hunter-gatherers, we look in more recent times, they don't get that much fat. They just don't. Even when they're hunting down everything. So, again, this is a myth. This is a myth, and humans, even historically, were still largely starch-based, carbohydrate-based, finding whatever grains, whatever plants they could find, grains, tubers, digging up lots and lots and lots of roots and root vegetables. Enormous part of our history. So it's not all this saturated fat. And then people don't understand. They look at that and go, well, where did we get it in the modern era? You got it from agriculture. You can't raise herds of goats or sheep or cattle or anything else without pastures, ways to feed them, ways to tend the herd. The same thing, you can't milk these animals unless you have a food supply for them. This is an agricultural creation. And even grass-fed animals in the pasture, like, yeah, they're a lot leaner than the grain-fed, but they're still way fatter than wild game. Way fatter. Because they're not running from predators and scavenging. They're in a pasture, munching safely, eating grass. Okay? We did not have access to this. This is complete and utter nonsense by a diet cult. Just like vegans are a cult, this whole carnivore, ketovore thing is absolutely a ridiculous cult. And they like to make believe nonsense. This stuff it's completely impossible. It's not supported by any evidence. It's not supported by common sense. You just have to use common sense about what we know about game animals and what we know about what people would have had access to. Common sense would tell you this is not even biologically possible. All right, guys, well, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative. I'll talk to you guys and gals next time.